Okay, so I have been having an absolute writing meltdown all day long today. Been very stressed out with this because this is like, the current writing project, and I'm not going to get into spoilers, but the current writing project has been relatively, for the most part, straightforward. I had most of my blueprints, most of my notes already situated, organized, and ready to go. And I knew that when I got to this last part, it was going to get a little bit complicated, but I didn't think it was going to get this complicated. I'm stressing to the levels of not nearly Devil to the Damned, but like if we're going like a 10 out of 10 stress, where Devil to the Damned was a 10 out of 10 stress, I will say maybe a 9. I'll give it a 9 out of 10 just to be fair. Devil to the Damned, writing that was a 9 out of 10 stress because just the whole time I was constantly being hit by like this, that, the other thing. And I wanted to just like jam my fingertips into my skull and just rip my head in half the whole time. And it only ever got worse until it was done. And right now, I probably say I'm at a 7 out of 10 comparatively. And I really shouldn't be, but the problem is the entire book is relatively slow going, and that's the point of it. I've explained this before. It takes its time, it's sitting in the moment, and there's really no antagonist, there's no real conflict. It's just the characters we know, dealing with what they're left with after the events of book 1 and book 2 and everything like that. And as they're picking up the pieces of their lives and kind of facing down the traumas and the stress and the responses that their minds have after the fact, and as they're kind of coming together, kind of thing. Well, there is obviously some kind of supernatural weirdness in the background. Think how in book 1, Kim's going about her normal day, and then there was always kind of something weird in the background. Whenever hearing stuff, seeing stuff, thinking weirdly, or just dreams, whatever, stuff like that. And then the characters in this book, it's kind of like that too, where a character is experiencing similar things, but on a level to where they're kind of used to at this point, and they're looking at it. Thought my door was open for a second. To where they're looking at it like, what the fuck is this? Like, I've been through this shit before. Why is this happening? Blah blah blah. And I'm also not that afraid of it because I've been through this shit before. But in the end, it's still really creepy how this stuff is going on, and it does lead the question of just like this stuff should be done. So the reader's like, what is this? Right there with the character of what is this? Because we should be done by all rights with this kind of thing. So, and that's fine, but it all culminates to these like 3 or 4 chapters that I didn't expect were going to be this long, but the way that it worked out, they ended up being a little bit long. It is a brief sequence in like real time, but the chapters kind of stretch on a little bit. But anyway, and it culminates to what in my head were 2 confrontations, okay? The confrontation with whatever is causing this madness, this the delusion, this fear, a confrontation with that, and then a confrontation with oneself via divulgence. So, and that's where I'm running into the issue is like, one, do I want to have the. It's so fucking hard to talk about without getting into anything. I can't even speak to. My brain has. I literally spent almost my whole shift without listening to a podcast because I was just thinking so hard about this. My notes are just a big fucking block of text where I'm trying to figure out how and why and what and how to figure this out, how to organize it. Because as I'm getting there, it's like, yeah, I'm making the scene work, I'm doing all this, but would it be better if I flipped those interactions where you have the confrontation with oneself and the confrontation with I'm just going to say the entity, just to differentiate the two. Right now it's entity first and then confrontation with oneself to kind of bookend it. But the way that would end is we'd have to go right back to the entity after to kind of finalize, and that just kind of feels very back and forth, and it feels like that would stretch on too long. So do I want to have it where you have the confrontation with oneself first, and then following that leads into the confrontation with the entity, and then that way it kind of like ends that and goes right back into finishing out the story. And I think that would work well, but at the same time, with the way that the conversations would go and the way and what our character would be learning from these things, it makes more sense to have the entity first and then the confrontation with oneself after. But then, like I said, then it kind of has to go back to the entity again, and it's like, fuck, I just want to break my nose, man. So, and I don't really know how to approach it, and at the same time, I'm looking at it like, well, we've seen this entity before, and their presentation has always been different, and how they're presented in this story is completely the opposite of how they have been, in the sense of like, before we saw them as cynical and just sinister, and in this you see them as sniveling, weak, and broken. It's because they are broken, so like that part of them is ruined. But we also did see this entity at the end of book 2, and if I recall correctly, I think they were, I don't remember if they were sneering and begging at the same time. I have to look back at that to see what their tone was. Otherwise, I have to kind of write a reason as to why that changed so drastically. Because I want to cry. I'm so fucking overwhelmed with this right now. Oh, and it's annoying. It's so annoying because I was really, 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 really hoping I could skirt by this entire book without running into this issue. Because every single book has this issue where I just get like surrounded in like a hailstorm of words and of just shit that I want to write, that I need to write, but I need to really make sure I'm thinking about and do it right. And also the reason the character cannot remember the deepest part of the trauma that they're essentially hiding from throughout this whole book. And in order to kind of free themselves from the shackles of that, the shackles that they don't know are even tied to them, they have to remember. And then in order to kind of cleanse themselves of that, it's like thematic. It's thematic for them to recall those things and explain those things to somebody that can listen and understand and validate them. But it's that idea of like, yeah, that's what I want to happen for the theme of it, but like, why does that work in the context of the story? I don't know. It just does. And I really don't have to explain it, but I like to explain those things. I like to make sure that people understand when they get to the end of it. You know, it's good to have questions, but I also want to make sure that they're like, okay, so that is the reason why they did this. Okay, so this, I feel comfortable with where we are because I understand that this is what the writer was trying to say, and they did say it. I don't want it to be so vague because I really don't know why that fixes it anyway. But it's also one of those things where it's like, can somebody pull their own interpretation as to why I did it like that? Because I have reasons in my head, but none that are so easily explained on the page is the problem. I can't explain it on the page very well. So I'm just kind of like tearing my brain in half. And the problem is I've already written a third of the stuff I was just talking about, a third of that final conflict. So now the notes that I was taking today, I have to go through and like reorganize, reinsert, and potentially rewrite what I just did. So that's good. I'm gonna try to organize some of that tonight, so when I go to write tomorrow, I can actually start writing somewhere, because I don't want to waste time tomorrow organizing that. So I'll see if I can do that. Oof. I'll see if I can do that tonight. But yeah, I'm like, all I can see in my head is orange. Just the color orange with like a static filter and worms popping out of it. Just like my brain is just like short-circuited all day today. I've been thinking and I also ran off of like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, of actual sleep. I'm fucking exhausted. I'm really stressed out, and now I have this shit in my head, and I'm just like, I want to get I want to get knocked the fuck out and wake up a month later when I have this solved. So, anyway, that's it. I just wanted to rant a little bit. Wish me luck.